Happy Friday, everybody! It's Dr. Bridget Young from babyformulaexpert.com. I'm a doctor of perinatal nutrition and a certified lactation counselor and founder of babyformulaexpert.com. Today for happy hour, we're going to be talking about appropriate, safe, and what's the limit you can stretch on breast milk storage in the fridge and the freezer. And also, can't talk about frozen breast milk unless you talk about sometimes frozen breast milk funk. How to know what's normal, what's not, and hopefully some tips to get your baby to accept frozen breast milk if they're having a problem. I've got my glass of wine. We just came back from the park. It rained a little bit of a hot mess, so just bear with me. That is a great start to the evening. Also, I'm very actively potty training Vaughn on day 4. So that pretty much guarantees we'll have some kind of embarrassing incident in the next 15 minutes. So also just bear with me there. Okay, this topic is, I'm actually super excited. They're obviously here. I'm super excited to do this because I've had 2 good girlfriends of mine come to me with questions, practically on the verge of tears, about something related to what we're talking about today. And the timing is perfect because literally yesterday, the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine released a revised clinical protocol number 8, which is human milk storage information for home use for full-term infants. So the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine is a group of pretty badass doctors, mostly pediatricians, who are dedicated to breastfeeding advocacy, research-based best practices, etc. And they put out all of these clinical protocols, which are research-based, exactly what it said, best practices for a variety of things. So number 8 is best practices for home storage and use of breast milk in a healthy, only what I deal with, healthy term infants. So there was only a couple revisions, but it was exciting to read the new stuff because I nerd out on things like that. So I was going to talk about it anyway. And like I said, I've had some questions about this general topic from other moms. So let's dive in. So first I'm going to focus on appropriate storage of breast milk under a variety of conditions. The thing to remember about storage of breast milk, and this dovetails perfectly to our discussion about the CDC guidelines for breast pump cleaning, is all of these are pretty much built around minimizing bacterial growth. So if you remember that, you can understand the recommendations and also feel really good if you sway from them. Oh, do you need to go potty? Come on in here, we can go potty. Come on. Thank you. So the goal is to limit bacterial growth. And you have to remember that bacteria grow faster and faster the warmer they get. So you have minimal bacterial growth. I'm going to have to step away and help him get in here in time. Hold on. Come on, honey. Okay. Sorry. Hold on. I got the potty right next to me. You going to go potty? Okay. Potty. Thank you for telling me. You got to pull your pants down. Okay. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Nothing is ever simple. Vaughn is joining me directly below. Oh, hold on. Good job, honey. Yay. Oh, I'm so proud of you. Yeah, Tinkle. We're gonna flush it after. Good job. Okay, here, why don't you just step out and then you don't trip. There we go. Okay. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Success. That was amazing. We'll flush it after, sweetheart. Okay, I'm so sorry. So the whole goal, yeah, we'll flush it after. I promise I'll let you flush it. Really into flushing. So the goal is to minimize bacterial growth. And like I said, bacteria grow faster at warmer temperatures. And the thing with bacteria is they have to reach a critical mass to cause an infection. So all of these guidelines for breast milk storage and food safety in general is to keep bacteria from reaching that critical mass. So with that in mind, best practices for storage of expressed or pumped breast milk. The first condition is fresh from the tap. So at room temperature, after you've pumped it. And if we're at room temperature, the conservative estimate is 4 hours. And they state that you can stretch this for 6 to 8 hours if the milk can be considered clean. And by that they mean bacteria will continue growing from how much is the starting point, which is super common sense. So if you are, I'm trying to think, like if you're a mother in Zambia with no access to clean water and you are unable to wash your hands, your milk is going to have more bacteria in it just from your body. If you're probably the average working breastfeeding mother in an office and you wash your hands and use appropriate practices, I would consider your milk very clean. And then you pour directly into a breast milk bag, which are sterile before you rip the little zipper off. So I consider probably if you're watching this, your pumped milk is in this very clean category. And then they say that's 6 to 8 hours at room temperature. So like just sitting out. If you're in Florida and it's 110 degrees, hedge more towards 6 versus 8. But that's a really long time. I mean, when would you ever not have access to a freezer pack in 8 hours? So that's freshly pumped milk can be out for a long time before you should think, oh gosh, I forgot about that. I should throw it away. The second condition is if you have an ice pack. So most moms who pump have at least a little cooler with the ice packs. And they've done studies that you can keep milk, breast milk, in an ice pack or in a little cooler with an ice pack for up to over 24 hours before we start to worry about the potential bacteria contamination. That is crazy. Again, when would you be 24 hours without access to some kind of refrigerator? Now, the molded ice packs are better. And what I mean by that is, if you probably got one in your breast pump kit where the ice packs fit right around the 3 bottles, as opposed to just a single ice pack floating in there. And that's, of course, because if you just have a single ice pack up against the side of a bottle, this side of the bottle can grow bacteria pretty quickly because it's not directly next to the refrigerated source. So molded ice packs are better, but even if you don't have molded ice packs, single ice packs are great for 24 hours. So if you're just keeping it, under your desk at work for 8 hours, girl, you're way better than good. Getting excited about my notes here. Do you need to go potty again? Come sit down. The next case is by putting milk in the refrigerator. No. And so milk in the refrigerator, the conservative estimate is 4 days. That's kind of where I draw the cutoff for deciding what you're going to do with the milk. The reason it's 4 days is after 4 days, you start to get pretty significant degradation in some of the awesome parts about human milk, like the some of the antimicrobial peptides and immune protective agents. Not complete. It just starts to diminish. So here's where I do the 4 days. If you're pumping milk, just make a decision. Am I going to use this in the next 4 days? If the answer is yes, put it in the refrigerator. If the answer is no, put it in the freezer. Now, if you forget about milk you've pumped in the back of the refrigerator, which we've all done, and you find it and it was 6 days ago, still totally good to use. Up to 8 days, I would say it's safe to use. However, if you're actively know you're not going to feed it until 6 days, I would suggest it's better to put it in the freezer. So that 4 day limit makes you decide what are you going to do with the milk that you've pumped. The 4 days is the cutoff because fresh milk is technically better than frozen milk, because when you freeze milk and thaw it, again, you have denaturing of protein, so you lose a tiny bit of the bioactive power of milk. Oh, hello. Oh, was it a little scary? So, now, frozen milk is still better than feeding formula, so I would still prefer, don't think, oh, if it's frozen, it's no good. I don't mean to say that. I'm just saying if you have the option of fresh versus frozen, fresh is better, and that 4 day limit is where I make the decision of freeze it, then thaw it later, or keep it in the fridge for 4 days. Now, milk that's in the freezer, how long is it good for? The answer varies, and I'm going to give you some hacks to extend that as long as possible. So 6 months is extremely conservative. So meaning definitely up to 6 months, it's good. The more likely answer, which I always hedge towards the more liberal answer, is 12 months, which is a full year. So, and your baby, the AAP recommends breastfeeding up to a year. More if possible, but a year is perfect because then, God forbid, you have to get rid of it. Your baby can have cow's milk at a year. So a year conservatively. Here's ways to be sure you're ensure the safety of the milk. So let me make sure I'm following my notes here. Yeah, so how do you store your milk? You want to store it in the back of your freezer. And this makes sense, like you don't want to put it in the door or be the first thing you see if possible, because every time you open the door, you have a blast of warm air coming in and you could have micro thaw in minuscule droplets along the milk, and as soon as you thaw, bacteria can become active again. So if that happens over and over and over again, you're going to experience some bacterial growth. Likely hardly enough to do anything to the baby, but this is a baby. Let's be better safe than sorry. So back of the freezer is better. However, you do not want the milk, especially if it's in the little plastic bags, which it probably is, to touch the wall of the freezer. And this is because the average freezer, especially if you have just like any normal house freezer with top and bottom, will go through cycles of defrost, so you don't build up ice in the freezer. And the way they do this is it basically just drops the temperature. So all the ice that's accumulated on the sides of the freezer melts. So if your milk is touching that wall, it's going to experience, we had plenty of crackers, it's going to experience this thaw cycle. So we don't want that. So the best thing to do is have it in the back, not touching the wall. The easiest way to do that, honey, we're all done with crackers, is to get a secondary storage container. Actually, now that I think of it, so we have this in my freezer, which all my breast milk is long gone, but for ice, but there's like 2 ice cubes in here. These fit breast milk bags perfectly upright. So freeze them. Would you like to come up? Okay, Vaughn is not wearing pants, so I'm going to try to do this without. Just hold him. There we go. So stack your breast milk bags in there, and that way it's just the plastic container that touches the wall, and that will serve to protect the milk from being exposed to micro thaws, which is something we want to avoid, especially if it's in there for 6 months. It could be, it'll be exposed to multiple of these thaw cycles. So having a secondary container is the perfect compromise. No magnets. Honey, you don't need to be up here.
Daddy.
Yeah.
Daddy.
Okay.
Daddy.
The next thing that we want to talk about with how recommendations for feeding the baby, and this is one of the questions I had from a dear girlfriend of mine, is mixing milk from different, that's some tinkle, mixing milk from different pumping sessions. So the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine actually recommends, if you have cold milk in the fridge and then you have some fresh warm milk that you want to pool with it to freeze, to not combine them until both are cold. And you'll see this on the internet with kind of no explanation. And I had a dear friend call me panicked because she hadn't been doing this and she was afraid she was going to have to throw out her entire freezer stash, which is like literally the end of the world. So here's why they recommend that, and here's why I kind of don't agree with it. They recommend it because if you're adding warm milk to cool milk, obviously you're going to bring up the temperature in the cool milk, and so anytime you raise temperature, bacteria can start growing more quickly. The reason I don't totally agree with this is milk is such sturdy stuff to begin with, and my concern is, you guys know this, warm milk is all creamy and all mixed together. When it's cold, the fat starts to condense and it will stick to the sides of the bottle. I'm sure you have all experienced this. So if you have 2 bottles of cold milk and you're trying to pour them together, it's really hard to get all of that fat off the side. And that fat is awesome stuff. I love pumping our babies full of fat. So I would rather have you pour it out while it's still warm, and that way you are sure you're getting you're not losing any fat that gets stuck to the side of the bottle. So however, I don't want to tell you not to obey the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine's suggestions. So here is my compromise. 1, if you have not been following this guideline, do not panic. Your milk is fine. Don't worry about the stuff you've already frozen. 2, think about when are you going to feed it to your baby. So so a lot of moms will nurse, pump after they nurse, and then pool all that milk over the course of the day because it will add up to just a couple ounces. If you are going to feed this milk to your baby in the next 3 days, it's fine because it's good out to 8 days anyway in the fridge. So even if it just grew, so if you're going to feed it to them anytime in the near future, don't worry about it. If you're going to freeze it so that it has a longer time, it has to remain clean, here's what I suggest. Only add smaller volumes of warm milk. So for example, if you have your first pumping session, you only have 1 ounce, you put that in the fridge. Second pumping session, you have 2 ounces. Well, that's more warm milk than cold milk. cool both, pool them together. Now you have 3 ounces. In your third pumping session, you'll probably only get 1.5 ounces. It's fine. Add it to it. So that way you're never, because the milk will come to a compromise of temperature. That way your compromise of temperature is closer to cold than warm. I hope that makes sense. So think about if you're going to feed it to the baby soon, who cares? You do what you need to do. Life as a new mom is complicated. If you're going to freeze it, only add in the smaller volume of warm milk. And then that way you satisfy the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, you satisfy me by being sure you get all that good fat, and you're still able to keep all your milk. Okay, last, thank you guys for sticking around this long. We're still here. Let's talk about funky milk. So that funk frozen breast milk smell. So I'm sure you have all experienced this. A lot of frozen breast milk, once thawed, has this very, I keep saying funky. I don't know how else to describe it. Funky odor to it. If you are breastfeeding, you know what I'm talking about. It's a little unnerving. So, and a lot of people are always worried, like, God, should I throw it away? Is it spoiled? Is it going to hurt the baby? Well, here is what causes the funky milk. Milk is full of fat. Most of the fat in milk comes in a triglyceride, meaning a glycerol backbone with 3 fatty acids, dangling off the end. And then breast milk is also full of its own digestive enzymes. Like, it literally will begin to digest itself the longer you have it. And this can happen especially once you freeze it and then thaw it. So these are called lipases, which digest fat. A lipase will come and chop off one of these triglycerides, so it's left with 2. That floating single triglyceride becomes oxidized, which is just a chemical reaction, changes the structure of some carbon double bonds. Not important. What is important is that oxidation process, that's where the smell comes from. So this process is also what causes the funky smell in a lot of smelly cheese, which is a dairy product. So it's the same thing, and it's particularly a powerful odor. It should not affect the taste that much. Now, a lot of our perception of taste is wrapped up in odor, but that's how I kind of distinguish. Now, this is a different smell than rotten milk. Milk can go bad, especially if it hasn't been stored appropriately, or God forbid you lost power or something. So it's a different smell. If you're unsure which it is, taste the milk. If the milk tastes bad, foul, curdled, anything like that to you, better safe than sorry, toss it. If it, maybe taste it with your nose closed. That way you don't have the smell affecting you. If it tastes fine to you, it should still have a sweet taste. It should be fine. So that's the first thing. And I have to, now the second thing is, some babies are a little snobby about their mama's own brew, and they prefer not to have previously frozen milk, which was the case with one of my girlfriends this past weekend. I'm going to read you, here's a statement from the clinical protocol. There is no evidence to suggest that infants reject human milk due to this odor. Well, tell that to this baby. Or research doesn't mean a thing if your baby doesn't obey the research. So it's rare. Most babies are fine, especially if they're older, taking frozen milk. If your baby is having some issues with it, here are some suggestions that might help. 1, first, you're sure that it's not rotten. It just has this lipase activity going on. They will eat when they're hungry, enough to get by. Now, this isn't much comfort for you because it often involves a lot of crying, but, call your doctor. But usually they'll get hungry enough that they'll drink a couple ounces, enough so that you're not worried they're going to starve. They won't actually hunger strike themselves to death. That's always your first thought. Okay, 2, because it is mostly the smell that is affected, if babies are very sensitive to smell, try the 3 Ds to distract them. Those are daycare, distraction, and daddy. 1, if you, the breastfeeding mama, is trying to feed your baby a bottle and he knows it tastes better from the tap, ain't no way he's going to take that. I hope not. So anyway, he's going to be, yes, honey, he's going to be much more likely to take it from daddy with you out of the room, because it's almost just like a slap in the face to try to feed him something he doesn't want while you're sitting right there. 2, babies are usually more likely to take this milk at daycare completely removed from their home situation. It's still comforting to them because it is your breast milk, even if it smells a little different. It's almost like any port in a storm, any part of mommy. So, which is great because that's usually what you use your pumped milk for. So that's 2. And then 3, what was the D? Distraction. So I hate overstimulating babies, but if you just need them to get started, a lot of times, like once they get started, they realize they're hungry and they'll finish. So take the baby for a walk and then bring the bottle with you, try to offer it while he's able to look at the trees. Some babies who really enjoy their play mat. I mean, I don't like propping up a bottle, but if you're desperate, have them underneath it if they start playing, and you really are having trouble feeding them. That may help. And then the other thing you can try is, because it's a lot of odor, try lighting a scented candle near where you're feeding, so that basically you're just filling the air, or anything, I don't know, cooked garlic, any strong odor to help minimize their perception of this milk smells different from my normal gold stuff. So those are things you can try. And I really hope that helps. And then, like I said, eventually they will learn to take it. If your baby is really having a hard refusal, start diluting your fresh milk with frozen milk a little bit to try to slowly work them up to having a frozen milk bottle without them knowing. Start off with mostly fresh, and you're adding a little frozen, so you are slowly turning over their flavor perception. And here's the thing. Moms have different amounts of lipase in their milk, so this is going to affect some families more than others. And babies are very different degrees of snobby about milk. Some babies really couldn't care less. Some babies are born sommeliers, and there's nothing getting past them. So your unique combination in your own home will provide your own unique challenges. Okay, I think that's it. I hope so I talked about a lot of stuff. I've received questions about almost all these topics from various different moms. I hope this is helpful. So here's what I want to tell you of my summary take home in general. These are awesome guidelines. We have to have numbers so we have some way to make our decisions. But remember that breast milk is really hearty, awesome stuff. One of the powers of breast milk is that it is antimicrobial, so it doesn't grow bacteria quickly. 2, the healthy breastfed baby is also a pretty robust little thing. And so they can handle frozen milk. They can handle milk at different temperatures, at different degrees of freezing length. And evolution is on your side. When I was, when Vaughn was younger and not having any solids, I found it very comforting that babies have survived for literally millions of years in desert situations where there's no water, so mom is not showering, she's not washing her hands, baby is likely drinking off of a, potentially dirt encrusted nipple. That made me feel much better about my situation. Okay, he can have milk that's been in here for 5 days. It probably won't kill him. The human race has survived this long. So I hope that is comforting to you. And now that you have these guidelines, if you have not been following them, do not panic. You're fine. Start following them now to the best of your ability within your own home context, but don't panic about the milk that's in your freezer. And if you have any specific questions about your situation, I'd be happy to answer them. You can leave it in the comments or send me an email through the website. And if I can help you with feeding issues you might be having in your house, I would love to. You can set up a time to talk to me for free for 15 minutes right on my website or right here on Facebook. There's a chat now, something like that button that you can click. Yeah, and let me go have wine and celebrate that Vaughn peed in the potty, yay! And you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye.